Hello, hello, hello. Hello, good evening. Hello, Rochelle White. How are you? Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, Rochelle. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Sunday is coming, Rochelle, so I just let you know. And everyone else that is here. Hello, Omonike. Good evening. Innocent, good evening. Guys, Dr. Sunday is here. He's just been ending a meeting right now, so he will be with us shortly. Favor, good evening. Hello, Dee. How are you? How are you, Maria? How are you doing? Gloria, how are you? Good evening. Good evening, Kimani. How are you? Dr. Sunday will be here. Ola Martin, it's been a while. Good evening. Annie Chukwe, good evening. Anu, good evening. How are you? Dr. Sunday will be here any minute from now. Eric, good evening. He's just ending a meeting. He's in the other room. Jane, good evening. Patrick, good evening. How are you all? Benga, good evening. Guys, start sharing. So let's prepare. So when Dr. Sunday just come, we just get started straight away. Dee, good evening again. Pastor Edwin, how are you? Gloria, how are you again? Anastasia, how are you? Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again this evening. This is the second time this evening, and I'm really impressed with some of the names I'm seeing that they're coming back. So thank you again, and please let's start share, please. Hola, good evening. That's Ella Martin. For me, good evening. Daniel, how are you? Justine, how are you? Good evening. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Good evening, Julius. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please start sharing. Today's title is Unbelievable Again. Yesterday was like mind-numbing for me for a while, but then I woke up. So we're starting another day today with another title from the series, The Plague of Silence. Dr. Sunday is here. Okay. Hello, Dr. Sunday has just informed me. He, as you can see him, you know that he's here right now. So for those of you, you can see that he's here already. He's still continuing his meeting, and he's asked me to ask you guys to share your testimony of what you heard yesterday. So if there's, right, okay, the people around here will share the testimonies of what they heard yesterday. OMG, okay, I got that wrong. It's actually, you can share your testimony as well, but it's actually us to share the testimonies of what we heard yesterday. So he's still coming, and before he finished with the meeting, he wants us to share the testimonies of what we heard yesterday. Well, yesterday for me, right, I was really sober, and I was sober for so many reasons, because number one, right, I haven't heard this guy's name. I didn't know his name, but recently I actually read the poem. I've read it in the past, but I was actually in a Holocaust museum in Israel late last year, and I was in an atmosphere, you know, the Holocaust museum in Israel is really terrible when you go in there. It's well designed and everything, but they make everything looks really alive. And just staying there and then seeing this poem and the way it was read out, and you know, you can stand and also read it, or sit down and read it. So I read this poem and I thought about it for about 10 minutes. But unfortunately, I didn't actually memorize the name of the writer. I just switch off as soon as I see a foreign name, I just switch off. So when Dr. Sunday put the title on there, I didn't actually realize that it was this man and this poem that I read until when we started the broadcast, and I went into Google and I checked, just like most people. So the title of The Plague of Silence alone for me, you know, over the last few weeks, 2 weeks now, it's just been something that has got me really thinking about life, my life, and actually the negativity about silence, about, you know, being, for me, I think silence now, following this broadcast over the last few weeks, I realized that silence is actually a negative thing rather than a positive thing. And one of the things that Julie shared as well, which I'm sure she's going to share again, is that we all keep quiet, thinking that we're doing ourselves a favor at that point, and at the moment I'm keeping out of trouble. But what we're actually doing is sowing the seed of a bigger problem to grow later. So that realization for me as well yesterday was really devastating. Usually I don't keep quiet, but I have been conditioned to keep quiet over the last maybe 10-15 years of my life. I don't think it's in my nature to keep quiet. I always want to talk about things, especially injustice. But at some point with religion and churches, it just got me quiet. It's like, you know, a lady, you have to be a certain way. I know I've shared that with many people already on this platform, but I'm just going to share it again. So religion and being in a church setting, they just want to keep your mouth shut. They want you to just listen and do whatever the pastor says and whatever everybody else says. My parents, I know I came from an African parents. My parents were not like that with me. But where I got my own part of this keeping you quiet and keeping you silent is in the church. It's not in my parents' home, because my parents' home allowed me to speak. I am the youngest, and being the youngest, you pretty much can do whatever you want. It's like a free. You have a free pass. Your parents are a bit older, so they don't actually do anything to stop you. They're more experienced. So I didn't get all the mouth keeping quiet at home. I got the keeping quiet in the church setting, with the pastor saying, gently kind of manipulating and gently kind of suppressing what you should say, what you shouldn't say, and sending the female elderly in the church and saying that I'm still a baby Christian, I don't understand, I'm not right, I'm very westernized, I'm very British, I should be this way. So just hearing that yesterday, I've passed the stage of anger. I've just come to a stage where now I'm getting really numb. If you're going through stages of grief, I think there are different stages, and I've been through different stages since being here with Dr. Sunday and being in this house especially. I think I went through some stages when I was in London and listening to him as you are now, but I got into a different stage or different sets of stages from the time that I came here in January. So hearing that yesterday and the poem and what the guy was saying, I can't actually remember exactly the words, the individual words in the poem, but it was that I was not a social. They came for the socialist, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't say anything. And that's it. That's our lives. That's it doesn't have to be being a socialist. It can be they came. Even terrorism that is happening in England, for example. We all say, well, I'm not a Muslim, or I'm not British, or terrorism will not come. I remember before terrorism started in Nigeria and the Boko Haram started bombing Nigeria and bombing certain areas. I remember that as a younger lady, I used to hear people saying that there will never be terrorism in Nigeria. At worst, if anything is happening in England, I'm just going to pack my load and I'm going to my country. I'm going to Africa. Those kind of, they say it in jest, but that's really their heart. So they say things like that and think, oh, I'm just going to go to my country. No terrorist is going to come there. I'm not disturbing anybody. But what happened? Not long after, we started getting terrorism in Nigeria. And it's not even just that. Other things other than terrorism does happen in Nigeria, but we didn't see that. We just thought that, okay, it's not us that is doing it, and it's not affecting me. So that, the title yesterday, that don't make the same mistakes, I think that is a wake-up call for me, and it should be a wake-up call for everybody as well. A wake-up call of something that we've been conditioned to do all the time, that we do to keep the peace, to keep our peace, to just stay friends with some people. We don't want to rock the boat. Sometimes they call it rocking the boat. Let the sleeping dog lies. All these things, all these languages that they've used to kind of suppress you, that you have used and agreed with and accepted to suppress yourself. It's now time that you discard all those kind of words or belief system that have caused us to keep our mouth shut, to keep quiet when we should speak, or keep quiet because we want to enjoy that moment without thinking about the future. So what it says to me is, well, that, I have a little enjoyment or a little peace now to create war for myself later. And do I really want to create war for myself later? No, I don't. So yes, this self-deception, we need to stop. This is really about ourselves. It's not, I'm not even saying that it's about church or it's about religion anymore. It's about ourselves, and we need to start being honest with ourselves and stop keeping quiet just for the sake of the short-term peace that we think we're having, because truly we cannot have peace if it's not sustainable. It's not peace. And we know from a lot of examples, including this poem, that this peace that we think that we're having is not sustainable. When this guy and his clergymen and all the pastors, they went to Hitler, I'm sure that they knew in their mind, whatever reason or excuses or assurance that Hitler gave them at that point, they knew that it wasn't going to last. In their own heart, they knew. So they never had peace. So whatever maybe we need to start redefining what peace is, define what keeping quiet means to us. We should redefine it, and then when we define it, then we really come to the true core of what we really need to do, rather than just keeping quiet and thinking that we can get away with it. We can just move on and, and get on with our lives and everything will be okay. And the damages that have been done by us keeping quiet. So I think that's really just what I want to share. There are other people in here. I don't know if they want to share anything, though, Dr. Sunday. And Mrs. Sharonka would definitely like to share something. So she's here, so I can get on their side. Thank you.
Hello, everyone on the platform. Good to see you guys here again. Yes, I wanted to talk about what Pastor Sunday talked about yesterday, which was, he's talking on the topic of the plague of silence, and the topic was, please don't repeat the mistakes of Martin Niemöller. And I believe he is a pastor, or was a pastor now, but when he was talking about him, the word that came to me was self-preservation. As human beings, for some reason or another, we have grown up to learn to be, preserving our life, just to survive, make it through, make it through each stage of our lives and come out of it just normal enough to be safe within ourselves. And in the process of doing that, sometimes what happens is that we just focus on what's going on around us. Even though we see lots of activities going on, we feel like, let's not rock the boat. We somehow have a belief that those things will be fixed by the people who are supposed to be fixing that. But I am just going to be living my life very safely. I am not going to go out there and, make any noise. I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm just going to just live and make sure that, I survive this world and I do okay. But what lessons I learned from this pastor, Martin, was that not only do we do that, but if we become influential and powerful and we get deceived by people around us, that nothing can happen to us, you are in the right group of people. You have now reached the stage of the people who are, the upper tier, the most influential, the most powerful. So you are safe here. There's nothing that can happen in the surrounding. You are safe. We got your back. And so what I saw with Mr. Martin's life was that he noticed that Hitler was, he was a very strict and mean leader. Whatever he said and whatever he planned, he always did it. I mean, it was a ruthless government. And fear caught him. And so what he did now, not only did he, as the Nazis were encroaching on different societies and people, the Jews, so what Martin did was he had this false feeling that since those group of people were not him, he was okay. He was fine. There must be something about those other group of people, maybe somewhere down the line, that is really true. That's why Hitler is just interested in making their lives miserable, killing them, and getting rid of them. And so he kept on giving these excuses that, it's just over there. It's not near me. It doesn't concern me. But the extra step that he took is the one that really, really got to me. At one point now, he decided that the best thing he could do was to make a deal with Hitler. Just let Hitler know that, what, all that you're doing, I see it. But you know what? As long as I'm guaranteed that I and my family or his friends or whatever, himself, will be safe, nothing will happen to him, he felt it was okay. And of course, Hitler was like, yeah, nothing's going to happen to you. So he believed a lie. He believed a lie because he felt that he was different. Sometimes we believe a lie while we are practicing self-preservation. We just decide to believe the lie, that this thing will never come to us. So as we saw in his story yesterday, it finally did, you know. He finally ended up in the concentration camp. So what was the self-preservation about? Where he finally came to a conclusion and said, there's no one left to speak up. And he that should have spoken up against this injustice has found himself right in it and in the concentration camp. Well, thank God, God had mercy upon him, and he came out to tell the testimony. And that was really striking and a message to me. You know, it's not like we have wisdom on everything all at the same time. But when we decide to stand up for truth, allow Christ to reign in the situation, wisdom will come. But first, our heart is the one that is to go and think about the situation and be able to empathize, sympathize with what's going on as injustice on the earth. Because at the end of the day, self-preservation doesn't work. It's just a big lie. It's just a good feeling, but it's not the truth. One day these situations are going to come knocking on our door. And I do remember one of the things that I'm learning here is that we are created to be solutions to the world's situations, to injustice. We are the one that can stand for truth because we know the person who is truth, and that is Jesus Christ. And I think it's encouraging to know when the scripture says that it's not by might, it's not by power, but it's by my spirit, says the Lord. A lot of times we think maybe we don't have enough power, we don't have enough strength, but we are not to worry because that's not even what it's going to be. It will be the Spirit of God that is in us that will help us not only to take a stand, but to find solutions for these issues. Because it is a lie. There's no such thing as self-preservation. Situations that are happening in the world, they're finally going to come knocking on our door. So it would be better as a body that we all arise together and confront these situations head on, knowing that God is with us. Pastor Sunday also taught this week about one man standing alone with God is a majority. We have God with us. So we stand up and he is with us. And so the fear, when we remember those kinds of scriptures, the fear just has to go. He also talks about us, authority is greater than power. We are in high authority. We are already reigning with Christ, with God in heaven. And we are already positioned in the greatest authority. We're already positioned in authority. And so we work from that authority. We may not appear powerful to the world, but guess what? We are hooked up to the one and only Almighty God. And so therefore, we can stand up as a body for justice, for righteousness, for humanity, and to be a solution to these issues. So I am so glad that I know about the story of Martin Niemöller, if I'm pronouncing it right. There's lots of lessons to learn from him. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, everyone. Hi, family. Thank you for joining us tonight again. I just want to share my thoughts about the silence, the plague of silence that we are listening to this week and last week. So I said already yesterday that what I personally found very striking is that there's this false assumption of security in the self-preservation piece of keeping silent when something has to be said and that we know has to be said. And Maya already mentioned it, that it is, for me, a lack of self-love if we keep being silent about things that we know are true and need to be spoken out about. And I think this is really a wake-up call for us to also do an inventory of ourselves, to really go be sincere to ourselves and ask ourselves, what are the values that we stand for as Christians? And is truth really one of it? And what does that mean if this is the case? Do we really stand for the truth when it comes to it, when we really are in that position where we have no other choice? Because, we all are somehow victims to the fact that we've been conditioned to think otherwise. And we have this great blessing of listening to Pastor Sunday and being enlightened about all these things that we thought were true. And I personally, I come from a corporate background that is very open-minded to everyone, and everyone should love everyone should do what they want. And so there are these unwritten rules, you can say, that people have to comply to when it comes to homosexuality, for example. You should rather not speak out against it because you don't know about your job and you don't know if this is gonna affect your career or anything like that. And we've heard of numerous cases where people got fired or expelled or whatever because they stood for the truth. But are we willing to pay that price? Because that's the price that we have to pay sometimes for standing for the truth. And just like Pastor says, it takes just one person. It takes one person alone on the side of the truth. And that's all we need, because, we are on the side of the majority if we stand for the truth. And we have to really digest this message, because I think it is so crucial that we have to take that message and ask ourselves, go through that message and ask ourselves, do we see ourselves doing those things? Do we see ourselves standing on the side of the truth when the truth is clear, is in front of us, and is requesting us to speak for it, to stand for it. So yeah, I just think that this is a wake-up call for us, like Mrs. Sharonka has said, and it is a requirement for us to make a self-inventory. Let us not just listen to these messages and ponder upon them somehow and think, enrich ourselves with that knowledge, because we don't have any excuse to not do anything. And it's not just in situations where you feel like, for now I haven't seen anything, so, I can sit down and wait until something happens. No, we all know that this world is not functioning the way it should function. And so we all have the duty and we have the responsibility to sit down, look around us, look into the environment that we are in, and ask ourselves, what is working, what is not working, what is wrong, and where can I bring a solution? Where can I speak the truth? Where can I bring the truth with the light that I have received? So that is my encouragement to every one of us, to myself, to, take this message, take the gifts that we've been given and start using it. Start using it. So that's all. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So what I got from yesterday's message that really struck me was, when you keep silent about something, it will eventually rule you. And I've seen that this is true in so many different levels, especially when it comes to the church. I think that the modern day church, at least in my experience, and I can only speak from my experience, but the modern day church, it seems to be obsessed with relevance, obsessed with giving the people what they want, obsessed with being popular amongst at least the religious people, or the people who are just seeking something. And I witnessed this in Los Angeles especially. The funny thing about Los Angeles is that it's a very lonely place. People don't know that, but I think the biggest demon in Los Angeles is not alcohol or drugs or the movie industry or the entertainment industry. It's loneliness. It's despair. It's feeling like there's no one there. There's no community. And the solution for a lot of Christians was to join a church. And what I realized is that there are many churches that are so obsessed with being relevant in Los Angeles that they actually started to assume the culture of Los Angeles. They started to put more importance on the people who were higher in status within the entertainment industry. And they all wanted to look cool. They all wanted to be a part of their culture so badly that eventually the church actually began to resemble the same problems of the community. But they thought that they were good. They thought that they were safe because they were a church and they talked about Jesus. But when you stepped into the church or out of the church, it was like there was no difference. You were just as lonely inside the church as you were around Los Angeles. And so that really hit home with me, the fact that you are silent or that you do not take action when you see that there's a problem in your community or there's a problem in that society. Eventually that thing that you are not saying anything about will eventually rule you. And that's the same thing that happened in Pastor Nommeller's, I think that's how you say it, with him. He was silent 1, 2, 3 times, and eventually the very thing that took out all the people he was silent about took him out as well. I think this can be applied to so many areas of our lives. For instance, maybe you have a career or you're in a job, and you see that the books are not being kept correctly, or you see that there's some problem where they're buying too much stock of this, and you just say, oh, well, it's not my job. Oh, well, that's not my area. Oh, well, I won't say anything about that. Maybe nothing will happen year 1. Maybe nothing will happen year 3. But just when you feel like you're comfortable and everything is fine, the company folds. And guess what? It was because of the thing that you never spoke up about. And there was reward in that. There was reward in speaking up, but because you were saying, well, it's not my job and I don't want to step on any toes and it's not my duty, it's not my area. You not only lost your reward, but you actually even lost what you had. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, to him who has, more will be given, and to him who lacks, even what he has will be taken away. So it's important that we start to cultivate these other areas of wealth that we have. And part of that wealth is our voice. Part of that wealth is our ability to speak up about things that we care about things that are true to the principles of God and his nature, and we know his nature because it's the fruit of the Spirit. So it's not foreign to us what we are to say. If you're having a problem saying something, it's because you don't want to. You haven't broken past this barrier, because it's very clear to all of us exactly what is good and what is not good, and what is right and what is wrong. These things are not difficult. God is not a God of confusion. It's very clear what we are to speak up on and what we are to promote, the kingdom of God. So it's not a matter of confusion. It's about, you are fighting with yourself. You're fighting with insecurity. You're fighting with fears. But all these things, if you do not break past them, they will eventually rule over you. Another thing that I find is that, in relationships, especially romantic relationships or marriages, that, sometimes people will see little things slip. Their relationship will, kind of fade, and they'll just let it. They'll just say, oh, well, I don't have time to talk about that. I don't have time to fix this. I don't have time to. But because you're not speaking up, when something hurts you, and then you don't say anything, and you wait for it to build up, you wait for it to happen a 10th time, and a 15th time, and a 20th time, until it becomes a huge problem and a huge barrier in your relationship, that's another form of silence. And the thing that you could have dealt with at a small level now is so big, it's now ruling your relationship. It's now dictating to you how close you can be to this person. That could be in marriages, that could be in friendships. Sometimes we see a friend who is getting mixed up in something and you know that's not good for them. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a bad habit, maybe, maybe it could even be them just eating. Something's off. But you don't want to be the bearer. You don't want to be the person who's pointing fingers. You don't want to be the person to bring it up. You want to be the nice friend. You want to laugh. You want to, but so you don't bring it up. You don't get there. Or maybe they even told you, don't talk to me about that. I don't want to talk about my relationship. So you just, put it aside and you just watch that person unravel. You don't say anything. And eventually that thing that you didn't say anything about completely rules your friendship. It completely takes the friendship away, and that happens also with our family members. Another place that this happens is in school. So anywhere from elementary school to college, I can't tell you how discouraging it is, and I'm sure to hear that a child isn't doing well in school simply because they don't want to ask questions, simply because they don't want to stay after school and get a tutor, simply because they don't want to simply say, I need more time to learn this, or simply say, teacher, can you help me? That form of silence, it can come from many different places, but in school, it really is a detriment because some of these kids are really intelligent. They're very intelligent kids, but they just need things to be explained and they won't speak up. So that might be something that you could tell your kids or your niece or your nephew, is that don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I don't know this. I'm struggling with this. That form of silence. Silence is something that it comes in so many different forms. Sometimes we can overlook it. And silence in school, I think, is the most detrimental because you could go throughout your entire life thinking that you're not intelligent, thinking that you're not, that you're not capable. I know that for me, when I was in school, I was a, if you can believe it, I was a straight D and F student until the 6th grade. Through the 6th grade. I was not doing well in school at all. My teachers wanted to put me in remedial classes, and I refused. I was getting D's and F. I couldn't join any clubs because I didn't have the grades. I think my GPA in middle school was like a 1.9, if any of you know what that means. It's like low, the lowest of the low. And it was horrible. A few events happened to me that completely changed me. And I went from a D and F student to an A and B student and eventually to a straight A student. And I was getting over the highest GPA, which is 4.0. I was getting 4.1 and such on, and so on. Now, I had no better ability before I was making those straight A's as after. There was nothing that happened. I didn't grow extra brain cells. Nothing happened. Do you know the quintessential thing that I used to make that change was the fact that I started to speak up in class. I started to raise my hand. I started to ask the teacher questions. I started to say, I'm unclear about that. Could you explain that to me? I started to ask my peers. I started to use I just started to be honest about what was going on inside of me. I started to stand up for myself. And that kind of process of learning to speak up when I didn't know, or when something was unclear, or when something was foggy, or when something wasn't explained properly, that ability to speak up actually helped me throughout many different areas of my life. Even now, even me speaking to you now, part of the reason why I can come alive, to you guys here is because I spent so much time cultivating that gift of speaking out. And it actually helped me a lot, especially when I got to high school and we started to have debates in English class. When you have debates in English class, it can get really nerve-wracking when you're the only person defending something. And it got to the point where I was so good at debating out loud that I would actually bring people from a majority stance to now over to my side. So this ability to speak out, when you cultivate it, it will reward you. It will reward you in many different areas of your life. And the other part of it is your finances. And this is my last one because Pastor's here. But in your finances, I heard a horrible story of a man who actually was silent about his financial struggles to his wife. He was doing very well and had a great business, and he was just taking care of the kids and the family, and everybody trusted him. And he was silent about these troubles that he was going through until someone came to come and take the house. and it just scattered the family. It just broke everybody in that family. And had he just stood up and said, hey, this thing happened with the business and we're having financial troubles, I need all of you to be, here with me as we try through this. Instead, he was playing charades. He was trying to keep up appearances. He was trying to keep everything cool. He was trying to be silent. And eventually that silence ruled over his finances, ruled over his family, his marriage, his relationship with his kids. That silence actually took over him like a plague, like a darkness, like Pastor was talking about, enveloped everything in his life. And it only took one admission, just one verbal admission to his wife, to his children, and it could have saved everything. So those are the 5 areas that I think that there are many, many areas of your life that silence can kill. But these are just 5 in different scenarios that you can kind of see how, if you get that unction in yourself that says, speak up then, because it will be so much worse later. So, Pastor is here.
Okay, thank you so much, every one of you that stood in for me when I couldn't stand in for myself. Thank you so very much. Well, here we come. So I see that some people probably have lost the hope that I was going to come today, but he that endures to the end shall be saved. So here we are. Sorry that I had to stay. I don't know what they told you was the reason why I couldn't appear, but I was busy on a conference call, international conference call, so I couldn't come on to be with you. Sorry for that, everyone. I hope you have shared the link. Let's go ahead and share the message. Let's go ahead and share the link. Okay. The topic of today is, I think we call it lessons from, lessons? What do I call the message today? Don't ever forget about, Don't ever forget about Dietrich. Huh? Dietrich. Don't ever forget Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Don't ever forget Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I'm going to be pronouncing it the way it works out, okay? But I'm not a German. But it's another German. Yesterday I spoke to you people about one German, Martin Niemöller. No, that German that I spoke to you about yesterday is a great example. They came for me. But this other one is actually a more celebrated German. This other person is a very well celebrated, actually more famous German than Martin Niemöller. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a unique man. You will not believe his story. You will not believe his story. I know I've lost a lot of time, but I will try to cover good ground. But actually, one of the things that I will probably do is to do a whole series on him. I think I'm going to do a whole series. He deserves it. By the time I finish, you will discover that he deserves it. So some of you have never heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, but I'm sure you've seen the name. We have written the name in the promotional material about this and on the topic. But his story is this. This man had moved over to the U.S., like many of us have moved over from our countries, and we are right now in whatever country you are living, as economic refugees, basically, just to make a living, to make a career for yourself. And even though Dietrich was a Christian and was a pastor, was a gospel minister, was a theologian actually. It was so good that in New York, he became he became the leader of, he became one of the leaders of the Union Theological Seminary in New York, one of the biggest seminaries in those days, in his days. But then this was, but when he was such a man of principle that I would like you people to, can you come here, ID? So ID is like one of us. Let's say ID represents me or represents you. If the things have been good in my country, I won't have come over here probably to study. Maybe I would have stayed back in my country and I would not have become a refugee or an immigrant. And some of you are watching this program today. Maybe you would not have become an immigrant if things have been great in your own country. If things have been as good in our country, like in Europe, maybe you wouldn't have been here. So the same thing with Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a minister of God. But he really needed to grow. He wanted to grow. He wanted to achieve his dream. So he traveled from Germany to New York, and he finished the Bible school. He rose in power. He grew very fast, and it was not just a Bible school. It became very successful, and he had a very good position in the theological school. So he was doing well. He was just settling down when things became really bad in his own country. Now, let me tell you another thing that is even more sad and touching about him and what makes him into a hero. Let's say right now, ID, you are here in Ukraine. Let's say you are doing well. You have become a millionaire, or maybe not a millionaire, but a pastor or a businessman or someone that is doing well. And now, you hear that Nigeria has a big problem. Nigeria is going through a hard time, going through maybe economic crisis, maybe Biafra crisis, a lot of bad things happening in Nigeria. And Nigeria is about to divide, just like it is about to divide right now. And you are doing well in New York, in America, or in Europe. Dietrich did what few of us can do. So that's why this man is highly celebrated. Not just by Germans. He's celebrated by theologians all over the world. He's celebrated by Christians all over the world. He's celebrated by Protestants all over the world. But let me tell you more. This man is highly respected. You will not believe it, but who respects him the most? By politicians and by activists. But let me tell you who are the activists and politicians that respect him most. Even though he's a pastor, it is not even the conservatives that respect him the most. Even though the conservatives also respect him. He's respected by conservative politicians, by conservative activists. He's highly respected. But let me tell you who respects him most. He's respected most by the Democrat, the left, the socialist, communist, the left politicians, and the left activists. They respect him so much. In fact, all of them use him as their reference point. So what made this guy so great? What made Dietrich Bonhoeffer, what made Dietrich Bonhoeffer so great before believers and unbelievers? What did he do right that gave him such honor and such respect? Let me tell you more about this man. His line of thinking, his philosophy has become the basis of action for nations and for activists all over the world. Nations are being built up in accordance to his convictions, worldview. So, would you like to know more about him? So, who is Dietrich Bonhoeffer? If you have not heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, then it means you have not widely read. It means It means, I'm so sorry if you have not heard of Dietrich. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So, but this guy didn't just have influence among the politicians when he was alive. Let me tell you something about it. His influence and his authority before all these leftists and politicians and conservatives and Democrats and socialists and activists, his influence really grew after his death. Believe it. After his death. It was after he was murdered that people even got to know about him. When he was alive, he was only known in the conservative world, in the Christian world, in the Christian circle as a pastor. It was only known in the seminary world. It was only known in that world. But after he died, let me tell you what. After he died, his star just rose in a big way. Now, why am I talking about Dietrich Bonhoeffer? The reason I'm talking about him is because what we are all afraid of and what we are all running away from could actually be our stepping stone. In the sense that, we are talking about the plague of silence. Why are people silent? Self-preservation. We are running from controversy. We are running from hatred. We are running from anger. We are running from people hurting us, from pain. But let me tell you something about Dietrich that is really going to fascinate you. Like I said, he had left his country to another country, to America. He was doing well. He was a successful immigrant in New York. He rose to the top of the theological growth of his age. And when he heard the news about what was happening in his country, that Nazi Germany, that Hitler had taken over, and it was now, like I told you yesterday, was killing the trade unionists, killing the opposition, destroying the Jews. You know what this guy did? He said, I am going to resign my job. I'm going to leave US, where I'm safe now, where my position is secured, where I'm in glory, where I'm being elevated, where I'm celebrated, where I'm comfortable. I'm going to leave my safety, my house of refuge. And before he left, he started criticizing Hitler and his government. So before he left, they knew him in Germany and they were waiting for him. He knew that for him to go to Germany will mean to risk his life. And this guy said, I cannot stand away from my people at the greatest time of their need. I cannot afford to live in luxury and comfort while my people are under the captivity of political tyranny. What a man. He said, my people need me most at this time of our history than any time ever before. And for me to leave them to struggle alone, even though the majority of the German people at this time didn't even know they were in trouble. They didn't even know they were in trouble. They were enjoying Hitler. And they were celebrating Hitler. They voted him in. He was being celebrated as the Messiah. But this man knew the danger that Hitler posed to his people. So he said, I will not be here in New York enjoying the good life while I know that my people are in danger. They are in the wrong hand. So people will tell me, what will you do? What will one person do? What difference can you make? Just one person. And he said, I don't know what difference I will make, but for me, it's more important that I will be with my people when they most need it. You are Nigerian. Nigeria mostly needs you and me and millions of Nigerians that are abroad at this time than ever before. But you know, I have not gone back and you have not gone back. And millions of Nigerians are not planning to go back soon. Why? Self-preservation. Some of them are not even taking interest in doing anything about Nigeria. They are not even writing anything. They are not even